A now visible trend during the pandemic, according to the CDC, is a spike in fatal overdoses nationwide, and that includes the Mountain State. Here in West Virginia, as 13 News reporter Larissa Casillas shows us, it's all too familiar of a heartache.
In the span of just a year, the Mountain State's overdoses went up by more than 31%. The state reports that in 2020, the number of confirmed reported overdoses was 1,275, up from 878 reported in 2019.
Hi, I'm Jim Fawcett, president of Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield, West Virginia. We're the state's largest commercial health insurer, and we employ over 600 West Virginians, 400 of whom work out of our corporate headquarters building here in Parkersburg, West Virginia. So right about now, I imagine you're asking yourself, why is this business person talking to me in my classroom? And the answer is simple. In the future, or perhaps already, you're going to have to make a decision about drug use. And the decision you make has a profound impact on businesses like ours. Now you're asking yourself, well, how do I impact businesses like Highmark? The answer is simple. Remember those 400 employees that I referenced who work out of this building? They're not just employees. They're moms, they're dads, they're relatives and friends who all have one thing in common. They care more about you than anything that's going on in that building. So when information hits our community about addiction, an overdose, or even the death of a student through drug use, it has a profound and immediate impact of grief and sorrow in our building. So we've decided to put this video together to provide you with information, some real-life stories, and more importantly, where to access information so that when you or your friends need it, you know that you can get it, whether it's today, tomorrow, or well into the future. I hope you find this interesting.
My daughter was a straight A student all the way through high school. She was running with the wrong crowds. She was 17. She went to the doctor. She got Xanax. She started taking Xanax for anxiety and drinking on top of Xanax. She almost didn't graduate from high school because of the people she was running around with, the things that she was doing. I was worried. She was 17 when she graduated, so she was a younger senior, and she moved in with her boyfriend. I tried to bring her home. I tried pulling her out of the apartment, literally pulling her out, carrying her out, and she didn't. She would keep going back. Just so many rough times, not knowing where she was or whether she was alive or dead. She was in the hospital. She had overdosed, and they used Narcan on her, but she was in the hospital for another week after that because her lungs they were damaged. I mean, she was on breathing machine. And you would think that something like that would bring her out of addiction. It never did. I mean, she went right back in the streets and started using.
You know, the opioid epidemic is a nationwide crisis. But in West Virginia, we have been hit particularly hard. As a matter of fact, West Virginia ranks #1 in opioid-related overdose deaths in the country.
Legitimate use of an opioid prescription becomes dangerous when you begin taking more than the prescribed dose, more than the doctor has prescribed for you to take on a daily basis. When you take something that doesn't belong to you, that hasn't been prescribed to you, when you actually give that medication to someone else, you can be held responsible for that. You can go to jail for that. It's something you shouldn't do.
The one thing she always did was keep in touch with me. And we'd go to church off and on throughout her addiction. And I said, well, I don't know where you live anymore because you moved. And I think that resonated with her. Her mom didn't know. I always tried to save her. I always tried to help her. That day, I was just praying, and I could tell she was at a crossroads. She was either going to die because she was in a really bad situation, or she was going to get clean.
It's important to know that opioid addiction is not a moral failure. It's not a thing to be ashamed of. it's important to know that there are resources and information out there to help you. You may not be going through addiction, but you could know someone that is. So it's important to know the signs of an overdose, to know what to do in a situation such as that.
That morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up out of a dead sleep. And 2 seconds later, my phone rang. And she asked me to come pick her up. She was ready to get help. She was ready to get clean. This was the 4th time that she was headed to rehab, and I could tell in her face and her actions that she was ready and she wanted to get help. She didn't want to live like that anymore. So she ended up at the Ray of Hope in Charleston. That's where she is now. And not only is she there, she's a peer counselor. So she is helping other people. And she's such a blessing to get through what we've gotten through, the hurt, the pain, the tears, the anger, just so many rough times. I had a happy ending. A lot of people don't. And it's just not worth that first time. Don't even start. I just want you to know, don't ever start it. Because just one time is all it takes to kill you.
We need to start at the very beginning to understand what opioids even are. This includes substances that you may have heard on the news, so names such as hydrocodone, oxycodone, oxymorphone, morphine, or even fentanyl. Illegal opioids are any drugs that you would obtain that were not prescribed to you, or street drugs such as heroin and also carfentanil. Carfentanil itself is actually a veterinary product. It's not for human use. Lately, there's been some reports of fentanyl ending up in drug sources that you might not realize are contaminating the product that you've purchased. This happens frequently because whenever you purchase illicit substances from a drug dealer, they might cut it or mix in fentanyl with their other product. So for instance, you might think you're getting heroin, pure heroin, but it will actually have fentanyl in it as well. These substances, under normal use, are prescribed by a licensed medical provider. They're tightly regulated, both by that provider as well as by the DEA, because of how dangerous they can be.
So what do you do if you suspect someone is overdosed? Well, you immediately want to call 911 because every second counts. You're going to want to make sure you let the dispatcher know that the person is unconscious and they're not breathing. When the ambulance and EMS arrives, they're going to administer Narcan or naloxone, which will reverse the overdose for the next 30 or 90 minutes. The person may need to have CPR administered them, depending on whether they're breathing or not.
Always remember to be vigilant and be cautious with any substance you take. Make sure it's coming from a trusted professional, a trusted adult, a trusted guardian, and never take anything that you don't feel comfortable taking.
Hello, my name is Dr. Michael DeWitt. I'm one of the medical directors for Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield Insurance. Also a practicing physician here in South Charleston, West Virginia for 30 years now. Well, peer pressures are a tough thing when you're in middle school, high school, and you have to stand up for yourself though, and do what you believe in, do what's right. So make the right decision, when you know that these things are very risky. It's not worth it. You got all your life ahead of you. So make the right choices, live a healthy life, enjoy your families, but please, steer away from these awful agents.
Hello, my name is Whitney Barnhart, and I'm an outreach specialist for the FBI Pittsburgh Division with responsibility for the state of West Virginia. I am based out of the Charleston, West Virginia Resident Agency, and in my role, I'm able to go around the state and talk to youth, community groups, religious and business leaders about what we as the FBI are seeing in our communities and educating our youth and our community partners on all of the aspects that the FBI investigates. Today, we are here to talk to our youth in the state of West Virginia about what we as the FBI are seeing in our communities. I'd like to introduce you to Senior Supervisory Resident Agent Tony Rauza and our Senior Drug Agent Jennifer King, who will speak with you now.
Well, I think if we look back about 5-6 years, we see that heroin, fentanyl, oxys, those were the prevalent narcotics, circulating around the cities. As time passed, and with that comes a huge overdose rate. In fact, I think West Virginia was leading the nation in overdose deaths if you go back 5-6 years. We saw a trend progress towards methamphetamine and the use of meth coming across the border in droves. And that flooded the market, drove the price down, and what's cheaper usually sells faster. We saw pill mills across the country, and in particular in West Virginia. Jen is one of our senior drug agents and ran several cases that she can tell you about that were extremely effective and impactful in the southern part of the state in particular.
So a lot of times we investigate doctors, and like Tony said, pill mills. Pill mills are essentially doctors who are prescribing narcotics to people who some may need it, but they're not doing the proper following the proper procedures, not giving medical exams. They're not patients are coming in and taking drug screens and not testing for their medication or testing for heroin on top of their medication. These are people that should not be getting prescriptions from doctors. One case in particular, we had a doctor who was prescribing 50, 60 people at a time. They'd come to his location and he'd write a prescription. Everyone would get the same prescription for oxycodone and they would leave. He's probably had up to like 200 people at his location giving out that same prescription. What we see is when we arrest these doctors that are running these pill mills, those doctors, other doctors see this, on the media, and they stop overprescribing. So it's very effective. So we've arrested a handful of doctors, and we've seen pills on the street go down since then. The problem then is that people go to heroin to get. It's the next level after oxycodone, and you see a trend with the heroin. Every time we do a big takedown or arrest on heroin dealers, you'll see shifts to different types of drugs at that time.
And these cases are hugely impactful. Everything is affected by the drug trade. So these cases are technically healthcare fraud cases because these doctors are out there and they're billing insurance companies, medical insurance companies. So we push into the medical billing fraud. But when hundreds of people are showing up at the same location, getting an identical prescription for oxycodones that they don't need with no medical exam, we're talking about millions of dollars. And then, we came in, we hit a bunch of these cases hard. The case Jen's talking about, that doctor received a 20-year sentence. When other doctors start hearing that, they start changing their tune. Recently, we hired a community outreach specialist whose job it is specifically to go out there, reach out to community groups, leaders, politicians, schools, religious organizations, and start putting out the brand. People need to know we're here or they're not going to reach out to us. In addition to that, we've reached out to the community with our first ever Teen Academy, which recently happened this past week. Excellent opportunity to get ahead of high school kids, get them early before they make bad decisions that are life-altering. We've had a Citizens Academy as well for adults. That's an 8-week program. They come in once a week for 8 straight weeks, and they get introduced to every facet of the FBI. Putting that out there and opening the doors to let people know who we are, I think is hugely important. We all live here. We raise our children here. We're all vested in making this community as safe and as great a place to live as possible. Jen, for example, goes out to the schools. She's one of our senior drug agents. She's out there putting out these awareness briefings. And
we give drug presentations throughout the West Virginia. We've given them at the Citizens Academy, the Teen Academies. We've been to high schools. We talk about the effects of drugs and how it affects you and your family and what actually happens and where it all begins, really. We try to educate especially these children, on what could possibly happen, and what that road looks like.
On my end of it as a supervisor, I'm out there trying to meet with local politicians, faith-based groups, put out the message that we're here to help, and reach out to us. If you need our assistance with anything, feel free to hit us up. I mean, we are here and we're willing to work. We've got a team of analysts here that are analyzing the data and trends from overdoses so that we know we can target a specific area. If Huntington is seeing a high number of overdose deaths, we know we need to get out there, do some outreach, do some education in the schools, and then also start running those cases and taking those drugs off the streets.
So I'm a mother of 3, and I often tell my children, pick your friends wisely. You are who you hang out with. So if you're hanging out with other kids that are smoking weed or doing drugs, you're more susceptible to be categorized with them, getting in trouble with them. If you're in a car with them and they have drugs on them, it's possible you'd be charged with those drugs. So I always tell them, pick your friends wisely. And that's probably the most important thing in this.
And these are life-altering decisions. I mean, like Jen just said, you're in a car and you get charged with constructive possession because you're there. This is going to ruin your life. I mean, job interviews, college applications, this is going to follow you. And, you know, it's unfortunate that a bad decision when you're young will affect you as you become an adult. But this is the time to reach out to teens and young adults and let them know that, hey, make wise decisions. And be careful what you do online. All you guys have social media accounts out there. Think about what you leave behind and what you post. What you say out there may be a joke, but it's taken the wrong way by somebody else. That can lead to federal charges. In addition to that, you may put something out there you think is hysterical, and then you have to sit across from somebody in a job interview and explain that to them. How's that going to sound? How's it going to look? How's it going to come across? You know, would I take a person who has questionable social media accounts when I can take someone who doesn't? Absolutely not. So that's something to think about. You know, in addition to that, if you find yourself in compromising situations and you need help, rely on the people in your community. See your teachers, talk to your guidance counselors, seek the counsel of religious leaders that you trust. Find an adult. If you see something, say something. I can't emphasize that enough.
Let's face it, life is hard. Sometimes bad things happen, things you can't control.
You know what? I've been in this house all day.
Sometimes the people you need the most, they let you down. It may not be your fault, and it isn't always fair, but slowly you become someone else. You pretend you're okay. You tell yourself you're fine and that you can stop anytime, but inside, you're falling apart. You make mistakes, do things that you never imagined, and you pay the price. Until one day, you find yourself totally lost, not knowing who you are or what you've become. There are many excuses to use drugs, and one big reason not to. So things are out of control. You've lost who you are, but there's still a choice. Life is hard, but drugs are never the answer. If you're hurting, don't fight these feelings alone. Talk to someone. Surround yourself with the people you love. Focus on your passions and what makes you, you. As hard as it can be, you're the only one who can make that choice. The choice to save yourself. The choice to live.
So hopefully you've seen and heard a lot by now. You need to prepare yourself to make a decision. Through this video, you've seen there's lots of people that really care about you, and more importantly, know that the information's available whether you need it today, tomorrow, well into the future. Arm yourself, get educated. Thank you very much.